Alright, I'm a big fan of fantasy, so it was a no-brainer to go see Warcraft. I'm not a fan of MMOs, I'm not a fan of real-time strategy, so I've never really played a Blizzard game. Well, that's untrue. I've only played one Blizzard game, ever, and that is Hearthstone. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of MMOs or real-time strategies, so I've never really played World of Warcraft, or anything else Blizzard has done. So I didn't go into Warcraft as a fan of the video game, but rather a fan of fantasy, and I have to say, I had a blast. I loved this film. So what is Warcraft about? Well, simply put, the orcs live in a different realm, a different world, and it is dying. And it's because of this poisonous, very corruptible magic called the Fel. In order for these war-hungry orcs to survive, they have to go to another realm, and using the Fel magic, they are able to open up a portal to the world where these humans and all these other races live. Azeroth. I think, is it Azeroth? Now, the Fel, this magic, it requires a very high price, and in order to open up this portal, there's got to be a lot of sacrifice, a lot of people giving up their souls to open up this portal. Obviously, prisoners. So they're unable to bring the whole horde of orcs into this new world, and so they got to find more prisoners, gather up more humans and other races to be the life source for this portal to bring the whole horde. These orcs are causing a lot of chaos. They're destroying towns and villages, kidnapping people, killing people. The humans had enough of that, as well as the other races in Azeroth. And so now it becomes a war against orcs and humans to try to stop the rest of the orcs from coming into Azeroth. Meanwhile, there's a story of one particular orc clan's chieftain who is realizing the terrible cost of this Fel magic, seeing how much it corrupts and how much it pollutes. So this chieftain is getting ideas. Maybe we should work together with the humans and stop this evil orc from destroying this world as well. There's a few more complications, a few more storylines here and there, but that's the most I want to get into with Warcraft's plot, without spoiling too much. Probably did spoil a little too much, slightly. Now, I'm a big fan of fantasy. I really loved Warcraft as it is. It's not perfect. There are a few issues I have with it, but for the most part, I really loved it, and let's get into the details of what I liked about it. For one, this is a big blockbuster type film. It's got a lot of CGI, a lot of visual effects, and being a movie of that type, it does those stuff really great. The visual effects in this film are amazing, astounding, especially the orcs and how they look. It's very similar to what I felt about the animals in the Jungle Book. They felt like real orcs, they felt like real people on the screen. I never felt like, oh, this is one big CGI character. Yes, the proportions are a little odd and maybe could be a little campy and cartoony, but it really fits the style of the orcs in the games from what I've seen from still shots of World of Warcraft and what I've seen from watching my uncle and having to used to see my grandpa play it as well. My grandpa's passed. He used to play World of Warcraft with my uncle. But anyway, the orcs look absolutely amazing, stunning. It's a real treat to the eyes on just how realistic everything looks. Is there some things in the visual department that aren't as great, are a little cartoony? Yeah, there are some moments where the background really doesn't fit the human actors, but that similar problem happened with the Jungle Book as well, and I feel that it's almost on par with the Jungle Book in how few flaws there is in the visual craft of the film. Because even though some of it does look a little cartoony, it does fit the visual style of when you see cutscenes and cinematic trailers for these Warcraft games, as well as the DLC and expansion of the Warcraft games. It fits that absolutely perfectly. And so it is a marvel to watch and look at, and that alone brings it at least average or above average. Even if the story were complete crap, at least it is visually stunning. The action itself is also really great, very brutal. Whenever these orcs hit humans or crash their hammers into something, you really heard it in the theater. It is one loud, very crunching, terrible sound. And as far as very brutal PG-13 movies lately, this is on par with X-Men Apocalypse, which I haven't actually reviewed yet. So now when I reference the violence in X-Men Apocalypse, I'm going to have to reference Warcraft. Great. But yeah, very brutal acts of strength and power with these orcs, and you really hear it and you really feel it in the theater. That's one of the bonuses of seeing it in a movie theater. But yeah, visual style, visual appearance, and action is all great for a blockbuster film, but is it a little bit more to that? Is there a good story? Is there something that can really impact me emotionally and really get me invested in the story? For some people, this might be lacking a little, but for me, I still really enjoyed the story. The story, while could be convoluted at times, is very straightforward and very easy to understand. Now, not being a fan of the games, not knowing any of the games or actually knowing anything about the story and the lore of Warcraft, I honestly didn't feel completely lost throughout this film. I think the movie does a good job at explaining a few things, and even though there might be some Easter eggs and more hints on the story lore, and hey, this is an important character, you should know this from the lore, even though there is some things about that in this film for sure, and I didn't really grasp it and it didn't really impact me because I don't know the characters, I don't know what's important and what the Easter eggs are, it still didn't hamper my ability to really dig this movie and really understand it in a way that was pretty impactful. Now when it comes to the characters on Warcraft, yeah, I'm on the same page as a lot of other reviewers, and the orcs are the most interesting and more developed characters of the film. You have Toby Kebbell, who plays Duratan. He plays the chieftain orc that I told you that wants to side with the humans. He is the one person, the one character I truly felt involved with, the one character I truly cared about, and it helps that he was the first character that we actually see in Warcraft. And there's a lot of times where we see it through his perspective. He's a war chief seeped in tradition of the orc ways. He distrusts this corruptible fell magic, and he is a family man who has just had a baby. I think there's a lot to really admire about his character, a lot to really care about the character. He's a very honor-bound driven orc. Ultimately a very strong, likable character. Even some of the evil orcs I cared about a little bit more than some of the humans because there felt like a little bit more depth to them. Even though they are evil ones doing evil stuff, there's still a little bit here and there where you could see a little bit of humanity within these orcs. Such as one of the evil orcs, Blackhand, who is played by Clancy Brown. He's a very proud warrior. He follows the evil orc sorcerer that is the evil main bad guy of the film. And he does commit an act of terrible cruelty, but he does it within wartime, and he does feel that he's doing the right thing. Plus, there are times where he clearly respects his orc brethren, even ones that are a little bit more traitor, or ones he believes are traitors. There's also the evil orc sorcerer Gul'dan, which is kind of like the Shang Tsung of this universe. He has green fell magic that requires souls to be used. So yeah, he's like Shang Tsung. And even though he is a completely evil character, you get a sense that, okay, the Fel is magic that corrupts people. It's like the dark side of the Force. It corrupts people, twists them, and who knows what this person used to be like before Fel magic became part of his life. I don't know, the orcs definitely feel like they have more depth to them, but that's not to say that the humans are complete blanks. And yeah, I can definitely see people feeling that the characters are more blank slates on the human side, and I understand that. It also doesn't help that the human side of the story probably is more focused on than the orc side of the story. I mean slightly more. At least there's more scenes towards the middle of the humans than there are of the orcs. Lothar is our main hero, played by Travis Fimmel, and he's pretty much the Aragorn of this universe. In fact, there are a few mannerisms, a few things that he does in his acting that reminds me a little bit of Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn. And it doesn't help that the scenes of the movies where the orcs have a little bit more downtime during moments where they can develop the actual relationships of other orcs with each other and develop their sense of family and create more depth, while the human side of the story, they focus more on the plot and what they're going to do to stop these orcs and the plans, rather than getting some downtime where they can do backstory. There is some downtime for the humans, but most of the human storyline is, what are we going to do with these orcs? How are we going to get rid of them? How did they get here? What's going on? It deals with more of that sense. And that does give the humans a little less time to be able to have more depth to their character. But I think what helps with this movie, with the characters that don't get a lot of development, I think the themes of the movie that intertwine between all the different characters is really fascinating. Yes, because it is this medieval fantasy type film, there's a lot of themes that are similar to other films, such as war, honor, redemption, all that kind of good stuff you'd expect. But there's also a theme of broken families within this film. It may not be as handled as dramatically as you would like such a theme to be handled, but all the characters pretty much deal with broken families, whether it's their backstory or whether it happens within the actual story of the film. Most of the characters in the film deal with either parents dying, not knowing who their parents are, a parent dying, being a single parent, children dying. Almost every character within this film has some sort of broken family, some sort of thing they have to deal with. I found that quite fascinating in the film, because not only does it help sympathize for these characters and give them a little bit more depth, but it also helps us as viewers to find similarities between these characters and really feel like these are some of the same characters dealing with some of the same stuff, just in different ways. Yeah, I thought all the acting was good, and even though the human characters are a little less interesting than the orcs, yeah, they're boring humans like most RPGers would say. At least when we get the chance to be either human or some other race, we don't tend to choose the boring human. But there are plenty of humans that I did ultimately care about, and that's because of their story, because of their broken families, because of some of the things they go through. I liked Ben Foster's character because I'm a fan of Ben Foster. I like his acting. I think he's a bit underrated actor. And even though he does do a little maybe over-the-topness with his wizard, he's not over-the-topness. He's not like Jeremy Irons in Dungeons of Dragons. He overacts in a subtler way of being this wise old man, even though he doesn't look like an old man at all. Where he's just all calm and just like, interesting. Almost like he could be a psychiatrist. But it never really bothered me in the way where it felt like overacting. I honestly really liked the apprentice mage in this film. Now, when a lot of reviewers said, oh, he's a terrible character, I didn't like him, I didn't care for him, I almost pictured a very annoying apprentice mage that's a bumbling idiot, when he's nothing of the sort in this film. Honestly, he's more of the practical characters that actually gets stuff done from time to time. In no way does he feel like a bumbling idiot that never knows what he's doing, and he was nowhere near as annoying as two other characters from another film that came out in the same time frame. He's not Woody Harrelson annoying from Now You See Me 2 as the evil twin brother, or the new Horseman girl in the first 2/3 of Now You See Me 2. Nothing to that extent. Now, you don't get a lot of him, and that's unfortunate because you don't understand too much about him. You just know that he's a runaway apprentice mage that dishonored his family and so and so. So So you don't get a lot of him, and that's unfortunate because maybe that makes him more of a blank slate to most people. But I really loved this film. I loved how the movie ended. There's a lot of really great twists and turns, things I wasn't expecting, honestly, and things that put more depth into the story itself rather than the actual characters. I liked how the relationships were by the end of the film. I liked some of the build-up to them, some of the sparks that might be with other characters and possible love interests. I liked there was a little bit of subtlety to the movie, even though most of the dialogue was expository and was explaining a lot of things they needed to explain. But it didn't bother me as much as other films that's just complete exposition. I really honestly want to see the next film and want to see where this leads to because I feel it's a very strong beginning. Now there were little things here and there that I didn't quite like. There were times where the CGI did look a little cartoony, but it was not usually the characters but mainly the background and the green screen and the griffins. The griffins did look a little more cartoony than the orcs and other creatures of the film. But there was a few odd choices as well that made me scratch my head a little bit. Like the orc wife having a child on all fours rather than on her back. That was a little weird. Almost like they didn't really have a baby at all. And there were times where, even though there were brutal kills, there are quick moments where it didn't seem right. Almost like they needed something extra on the humans themselves to really make that feel realistic. Like for instance, there's this one character towards the end of the film, not a main character, not a major player, but this character towards the very end that gets grabbed by one of the evil orcs, the Black Hand. He's lifted up, the huge orc hands around his neck, and he just squeezes and you just hear that terrible snap of his neck as his throat is just completely squished. But of course, when he lets go, you see a brief moment where the actor's neck looks completely fine, just the way it was when he picked him up, just before he falls down. And unfortunately, because of that crack, because you know that neck breaks, you're looking as the hand opens up, and so when you see the neck really doesn't look all that different, you know, okay, they didn't add anything to make it look like crazy, horrible death. Of course, it's PG-13, but they could have done something a little different, right? Plus, there are a few things here and there that aren't quite explained or explained way too fast, kind of like Now You See Me Too, but even though Now You See Me Too, they were explained just in a nonchalant way that made absolutely no sense. In this one, it did make sense. You just wanted more depth to it. You wanted more understanding to it, or at least I felt that way. But for me, I feel Warcraft is a solid 4.5 stars. So did you see Warcraft? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my 2015 and 2016 reviews. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.